Emily huddled in the corner of the bathroom stall. Her lunch lay untouched on her lap as she nervously reviewed her exam material. Outside the walls of the stall, classmates chatted about makeup and crushes. The bell rang and the schoolgirls poured out of the bathroom. Emily took a deep breath and stepped out of the stall. She washed her hands, all the while avoiding looking down at them. She knew her fingertips were a mess, raw and slightly bleeding. She stared straight ahead at the mirror, muttering reassurances to herself. "You can do this. You're going to pass this exam." The hallways were silent and deserted as Emily stopped at her classroom door. She looked through the window at the neat rows of desks. Sat behind each one was a student, exuding calmness, ready for the exam. It was so different from her own frazzled appearance. Her breath shook and her hand trembled as she pushed the door open, its creak echoing in the quiet hallway. As she entered the classroom, some students looked up and snickered, but Emily was focused. She needed to find her seat and pass this test. The classroom seemed to blur around her as she focused on the exam paper in front of her. Her anxiety hit a peak, and her fingers automatically moved to her mouth. As Emily attacked her exam questions and her fingertips with equal ferocity, whispers turned to gasps, then to screams. "She's a monster!" one student cried out. Emily, deeply absorbed, kept writing, unaware of the chaos brewing around her. Confronted with the final question of the exam, Emily bit down on her fingernail until a loud crunch filled the room. A few students fainted. One vomited. The rest were in too much shock to react. When the teacher came over to help, Emily, still lost in her exam, accidentally shoved her away. Blood was sent splattering across the floor and onto her paper. Emily's eyes moved from her stunned teacher to her own hands, her expression turning to horror. Still, her mind urged her on. Wipe the blood away, keep writing. She continued until paramedics arrived and pulled her from her desk. In the plain, clinical office of the psychiatrist, Emily sat with her injured finger tightly wrapped in gauze. Blood still seeped through, staining it red. The psychiatrist, a woman with a calm yet assertive manner, started to discuss everything that led to her being committed to this facility. Unaware, Emily began nibbling on her other hand. "Do you know what a coping mechanism is?" the psychiatrist asked in a gentle but firm tone. Emily, her eyes misting with tears, shook her head slightly, while her hand moved instinctively to her mouth. "It's something you do to reduce stress or discomfort," the psychiatrist explained, observing Emily closely. "But if it hurts you, it's considered maladaptive, like your nail biting." Emily stopped biting and clenched her hand into a fist in her lap, fighting the urge. "Do you remember the first time you started biting your nails?" the psychiatrist asked. Emily nodded, her mind drifting back to a dark memory she wished she could forget. "It was years ago," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just a little girl." She described the night it all started. Her father drunk and aggressive, her mother coming home late to spark a violent argument. Sent to her room, Emily listened as the noise grew. Yelling, something breaking, a loud thud. Curiosity drew her out, only to find her mother on the floor, her father standing over her, anger coursing through every sinew. That's when Emily started crying uncontrollably until she bit her tongue. The pain cut through her sobs. "That was when I learned that pain," Emily said, looking into the psychiatrist's eyes. "Pain could silence the fear, the anxiety. It made everything quiet." The psychiatrist wrote this down, her face reflecting deep consideration. "You've carried this way of coping into your adolescence," she noted. "Now we need to find healthier ways for you to manage your feelings." Emily watched the psychiatrist, her feelings a tangle of fear and hope. As her fingers slowly moved back toward her mouth, the psychiatrist handed her a small, bright ball. "Let's keep your hands busy," she suggested. Emily took the ball and squeezed it, shifting her focus to the pressure in her grasp rather than the pain. Later that day, in the recreation room, Emily couldn't help but feel like she'd accidentally stumbled into a preschool class, not a psychiatric facility. There she was, notably the eldest, towering over kids like a giant. Their little hands were fitted with bandages, a telltale sign that they all shared a fondness for compulsive habits. It should have made her fit right in. It didn't. Emily gripped the stress ball as she took a seat in one of the small chairs. She thought about playing checkers with the boy seated beside her, but decided against it. Instead, she started peeling away the gauze from her finger. The room went quiet. The children watched, their expressions a mix of curiosity and awe. The little boy next to her fidgeted, uneasy. "We're not supposed to do that," he murmured, his voice filled with a mix of fear and fascination. Emily gave a half smile, her face showing a blend of sadness and defiance. "Sometimes the rules are too hard to keep," she whispered, tossing him the stress ball. As Emily pulled off the final layer of bandages, revealing the raw, sensitive skin underneath, a noticeable shift occurred among the watching children. They looked at their own wrapped hands, and then back at Emily. Emily's small act of defiance seemed to linger heavily in the room. Within moments, all the children began unwrapping their bandages and feasting on their nails and fingertips. Recognizing Emily's potential to influence the other children, the staff decided to place her in solitary confinement. The room was stark, equipped only with a chair and a camera to record every moment under close surveillance. The psychiatrist glared at Emily, while the nurses tightly secured her limbs to the chair with leather straps to prevent self-harm. "You started a feeding frenzy," the psychiatrist sternly said, watching Emily's reaction closely. "You can't bite your nails in front of the kids." With that, she turned on her heel and slammed the door shut, leaving Emily alone. Only the closed-circuit television kept her company, the prying eyes beyond watching her, staring at her. Confined, Emily's anxiety soared to new heights. Every single movement caused the restraints to strain and dig into her skin, a stark reminder of her confinement. Overwhelmed by a growing desperation, she gnawed at the leather straps with unexpected ferocity. Her teeth had become surprisingly sharp, her desperation transforming them into something wild and untamed. Maybe she was a monster. Would that be such a bad thing? Monsters are strong. Monsters aren't broken or afraid. Monsters are survivors. Once free of her shackles, Emily quickly removed the remaining gauze from her hands. Beneath the wraps, her fingers had undergone a shocking change. They were no longer topped with human nails, but had morphed into sharp, black, chitinous points. A wild giggle escaped her as she looked over her new claws. A wave of power washed over her, wiping away any remnants of the fragile, subdued girl she had once been. Turning to face the camera that had been watching her every move, her eyes glinted with a fierce, unsettling joy. She lunged at the lens, attacking it with her new claws. The camera vibrated violently as her last look, a chilling, victorious smirk, fizzed into static before the screen abruptly went black. She had become SCP-8480-A. SCP-8480, classified with a containment class of KETER, a disruption class of ECHI, and a risk class of critical, refers to an anomalous mental disorder affecting children aged 3 to 14, known as SCP-8480-1 instances. These children exhibit a range of symptoms from moderate to severe anxiety, headaches or migraines, intensive nail biting, onychophagia, skin-eating dermatophagia, unusually rapid healing, and a high tolerance for pain in their digits. The disorder typically activates under conditions of extreme, persistent anxiety or traumatic experiences, particularly if the child uses nail biting as a coping mechanism during such times. Following infection, the progression of symptoms in SCP-8480-1 instances varies depending on internal and external stress factors. A significant number of cases may persist into adulthood without clear symptoms. Currently, a substantial number of infected children, recorded in the thousands, are under the care of the Foundation, having been committed before reaching the age of 15. A notable subject, SCP-8480-A, or Emily Curtis, age 20, was significantly older than typical instances at the time of discovery. Stage 1 of SCP-8480 can initiate any time before adolescence, typically affecting children around the age of 9, although cases as young as 3 months have been noted. Diagnosing infants is challenging as they lack teeth. Early signs often exude sucking on fingers or gumming their limbs. Regardless of age, SCP-8480-1 instances exhibit initial symptoms within 2 to 3 days of the triggering event. During this stage, instances commonly experience low to moderate anxiety throughout most days. They may also suffer from mild physical discomforts, such as stomach aches or headaches, which are frequently dismissed as common childhood complaints. Moreover, these children develop various maladaptive coping strategies, including skin picking, hair pulling, and notably, nail biting, which they often describe as providing the most relief. A troubling psychological symptom is the onset of a deep-seated belief among the affected children that there is something fundamentally wrong with them, which cannot be corrected. It remains unclear whether this belief is a direct symptom of SCP-8480 or a psychological side effect of the disorder. Without intervention, children typically progress to Stage 2 within 6 months to a year from the appearance of the first symptoms. Stage 2, referred to as stasis, marks a deepening of the initial symptoms observed in SCP-8480-1 instances. In this stage, the afflicted children become heavily dependent on their maladaptive coping mechanisms to manage their emotional states. Despite attempts through medical, psychological, or therapeutic interventions, these behaviors persist unabated and intensify. During Stage 2, instances notably increase their reliance on nail biting and skin eating, which are used consistently to regulate their emotions. This escalation in behavior frequently results in physical injury, with instances often experiencing bleeding due to the severity of their actions. SCP-8480-1 instances are capable of remaining in this stage indefinitely. Notably, SCP-8480-A is the oldest recorded instance who had remained in Stage 2 until just before being admitted into Foundation care. Progression to Stage 3 occurs only after an SCP-8480-1 instance endures a significant and prolonged period of stress, anxiety, and traumatic experiences. The specific circumstances that catalyze this transition vary from individual to individual, making it challenging to predict exactly what will trigger the advancement to Stage 3. Stage 3, termed Complete Infection, marks a critical phase for SCP-8480-1 instances, where mitigation of symptoms and reduction of self-inflicted injuries become the primary focus, as further recovery is not feasible. In this stage, all previous symptoms escalate from moderate to severe, accompanied by several distinct and severe anomalous effects. The skin and muscles in the fingers and hands of affected individuals soften significantly, making them more susceptible to damage. Biting their fingers, nail beds, or hands triggers the production of nerve blockers and endorphins in the brain. This adaptation reduces pain and provides a brief sensation of pleasure, complicating the cessation of these behaviors. The hardening of the teeth enables instances to bite through not just flesh, but also bone, intensifying the severity of their condition. Anomalous cellular regeneration is heightened, leading to rapid tissue repair and forcing a cyclical pattern of self-consumption to manage emotional distress. Instances develop a compulsive need to consume the flesh and nails around their fingers, driven by their accelerated healing rates. Affected subjects experience a profound psychological impact, feeling fundamentally broken and no longer identifying as human. This manifests in a loss of interest in normal human activities, including eating anything other than their own body. Current research efforts are directed towards finding potential cures or methods to neutralize SCP-8480. However, no effective treatment has been discovered yet. Instances in Stage 3 will persist in this state until their biological functions cease, underscoring the dire nature of this advanced stage of SCP-8480. Stage 4, known as Reclamation, represents a profound transformation in SCP-8480-1 instances, believed to occur after a period of deep self-reflection and acceptance of the traumas that triggered their condition. This stage is only reached when an instance stops the constant self-consumption of their fingernails and surrounding tissues. The symptoms characteristic of Stage 4 include complete cessation of pain, although it remains unclear whether this lack of sensation is due to physiological changes or psychological factors. A significant reduction in anxiety levels, which drop to minor or negligible. The nature of this reduction, whether anomalous or not, is yet to be determined. While compulsive behaviors like nail biting and skin eating cease, subjects continue to exhibit other maladaptive coping mechanisms and signs of psychological distress. the development of black chitinous growths in place of fingernails, which are capable of cutting through metal, stone, and organic materials, marking a significant physical anomaly. Enhanced physical capabilities, including increased strength, endurance, and metabolism, which contribute to a heightened state of existence. Marked increase in hostility towards Foundation staff, coupled with a refusal to remain in containment, posing significant challenges to management and security. Due to these complexities and the substantial threat posed to normalcy, containment protocols for SCP-8480-1 instances in Stage 4 have been entirely revised. All previous treatment approaches have been suspended indefinitely, reflecting a shift in strategy in response to the unique challenges presented by this advanced stage. All SCP-8480-1 instances are mandated to be isolated and contained at Site-80-P, ostensibly under extended psychiatric care. Bandages, gauze, splints, and casts are provided only upon the instance's request. A critical part of the containment strategy involves placing any potential SCP-8480-1 instance in a controlled, traumatic scenario post-identification, without the awareness of the subject or their guardians. Should symptoms escalate after the induced trauma, the individual is immediately transferred to Foundation custody. Strictly, Foundation staff are prohibited from offering counseling, support, or any mental health treatments to SCP-8480-1 instances. Furthermore, these instances are not discouraged from engaging in maladaptive auto-cannibalism, as this behavior has shown to deter the progression to Stage 4. Consequently, SCP-8480-1 instances require minimal sustenance, only needing food and water once a month, and are kept in solitary confinement continuously. SCP-8480-A, identified for aggressive immediate measures, is to be neutralized upon detection, with remains to be sent back to Site-80-P for detailed analysis and further study. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob that will make you question whether your nail biting is just a bad habit or an anomaly in the making. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.